then also just like mentally and psychologically as well, and how they can have either sometimes positive, sometimes not so positive kind of impact. And then sometimes for some people, then it doesn't make any difference. You know, some introverts or some people that that are homebodies, it may not impact as much. But I think for the most part, most of us are impacted by it. And then we'll go on to importance of biblical readings, the spiritual books, and how again that can enrich your spiritual life. Good works, and then the last two aren't so spiritual as topics: the importance of balance and time management. I will try to put a spiritual lens across them, but there will be some kind of mention of things that are kind of non-spiritual, as well as some spiritual things that are within those two topics. So what I'll try to do now is I'll press this polling button, and I'll give you guys a little, maybe a couple of minutes. It's only 3 or 4 questions. I believe this is anonymous. And we're just going to kind of poll for these 3 or 4 questions, and I'll be presenting some things that are relevant to some of these questions. So it'd be nice to see what your answers are. So I'll just pause for a bit. Tim, if I press this end polling, does that mean that I'll get that these poll results will kind of come up, won't it? So this is the first time I've used.
Probably a good question for Michael. Michael, does the poll
Pop up?
I think some people are saying the poll's not kind of showing up.
Is it showing up on your screen?
Yeah, guys. I'm not seeing any poll on my screen. Hey, Luke, how are you?
Hey,
how's it going? Long time.
It's been a while.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not seeing any poll online. We'll go for coffee soon. Yeah.
Mike, are you host? Yeah. Yeah, I think launch poll. Yeah, that's it.
Where?
That makes sense.
Loving the commentary from Mark and CK.
All right, poll. Launch poll. Well, I don't know. Look, is it launched? Can everyone see it?
I can't see it.
No, just the button goes. The button goes like you can't click it, like unhighlighted, and then. Oh yeah, maybe
Is it? Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Yeah, all good.
No, it doesn't look like it's launching. Well, Luke, what you could do if you can always just ask the questions and get people to type their answers, but you won't really get much of a poll at the end. Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to work.
تيمي
Warner, how you going?
منور يا تيمي.
Thank you, Warner. Likewise. We can see the top of your head.
I'm trying to get my what do you call it, background. أهو. إيه رأيك؟ You like that?
Hello, George.
Say hello, George.
We have Luke with us, but we're just having some technical difficulties with the poll.
With the what?
We have a poll. Luke prepared a poll.
You just answered it.
Oh, you answered it. You have access.
It just asked me for it, and I just answered the poll.
Oh,
Yeah, I
What?
do.
When I logged in, it asked for questions. Mark and DK say hi.
the login. Oh wait, maybe you can change the settings. Yeah.
As soon as I came in, it asked me for it. Basim, Marina. والباقي كله behind all these people that are sitting behind blank screens لازم get virtual background people, and then you don't have to hide behind the back screen. We just want to see your face.
Yeah, Luke's there.
Jonah, Monique, Mary.
Guys, I just got out and came back on.
No, really.
Wait, let me.
Do you need instruction on how to get a virtual background? لا. طيب.
Wait, I'll leave and come back.
Everybody's got blank faces. ايوه كده كيرو كده يا اخيرا
Eating lip.
اخيرا منور يا كيرو. لا مش سامع. unmute your microphone عشان نسمع انت بتقول ايه حضرتك.
Who's the technical director of this initiative, and can we have a performance review?
لا لسه فاضل 9 دقايق. So literally ideally they're not running behind. They're 9 minutes ahead. منور يا كيتي. ايه ده. That's a good one, Monique.
Yeah, the poll. It asks you the poll when you enter.
It asked me all the questions. I just answered them. Are you bored? Are you happy? I said I was happy.
Are you really happy, Awuna?
I'm very happy. طالما أنا شفتكم أنا very happy.
It asks you the question when you go into the when you join.
It's only on.
No, you can.
But you can log out and log back in.
Yeah, log out and log back in. All right.
JP. I love the mic, JP. We need to do the podcasts. Wow.
Come and do it.
I love it.
It's ready. Everything's ready. Everything's set up.
I know. We're ready to have our own radio station.
That's right.
Radio 2GB. But in your case, it's 2JP.
What do you mean 2JP?
You know, there's 2GB.
Ah, yes. 2JP.
That's amazing.
That's punny.
Erini, Pasi. مين تاني
أيوة،
هنا؟
ناس. إيه.
The question answer.
What am I reading?
Yeah, about the same.
How do I get rid of this?
Okay, we've done the poll.
Same.
Maybe put your hand up if you, or your thumb up if you've done the poll.
Standard.
What poll?
What poll? The poll in front of your face.
Oh, I can't see anything.
No. You have to.
Yeah, I can't
You have
see
to leave
anything
and come
either.
back. You have to leave and come back to access it.
I'll leave the meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
How do you minimize?
Exactly.
You get it.
Hello, Sultan.
Are you getting results, Luke?
I think I logged out and I didn't log back in. Sorry, I logged out. When I logged back in, I don't think I'm an admin again.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
Michael.
sorry.
Michael, you just got to make him host again.
All right, I think I'll keep on going through the presentation. I think, yeah, it's interesting doing a talk over online. I think it's sometimes you feed off.
طب قبل ما نبدأ يا لوك.
Yeah, go on, Abuna.
Can we just say our Father?
Yeah, sure.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil through Jesus Christ our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, and the power, the glory forever and ever. Amen. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Luke. May the Lord reward you with heavenly rewards. تفضل حبيبي.
Thank you, Abuna. So I suppose when it comes to isolation, it can feel very, I don't think lonely is the right word, but it's probably the best word I can find, or isolating, or isolated. You know, that there are a lot of us in our community that it's something that we like to do is to meet up with other people and to sit down and to chat with them, and that sense of community has always been ingrained in us. That it's a physical, it's one that's quite physical, where we're like at a restaurant, or we're physically at church together, or we're just meeting up with friends, or we're catching up with each other. And that's one thing, I suppose, that we're not able to do. So that may lead us to one of many different things. It may lead us to feeling a bit more isolated, like we're on our own, like little island, where we're kind of forced not to be able to physically socialize, you know, like to be around others. Or it may lead us to socialize a lot more on the phone, or on social media, or on different outlets, to actually get that from different outlets. But definitely, it's a new type of normal for us. It's interesting because our church is a monastic church, so we kind of pride ourselves on the fact that a lot of the individuals kind of post the era of Diocletian decided that they would go do this in and of themselves. That was their calling. And we have villages of tens of thousands of monks. They did this by their own choice. But it's not everyone's calling to be a monk, obviously. But we can always learn from them and take from some of their contemplations and some of their example. And they're also biblical examples where the Lord allowed people to be isolated, and they dealt with it in different ways. And there's two kind of Old Testament examples that I'll mention, and hopefully we can kind of learn from them together. The other thing, I suppose, from a spiritual viewpoint, is that sins or habits, whether positive or negative, but maybe I'll focus just on the negative ones that we were able to escape from, in the sense that we were able to go out of our house more frequently and more easily. We now really need to face, because we're going to be indoors for the foreseeable future. So some of these kind of measures, especially Bible reading, spiritual books, and prayer, obviously, of course, they will fill the void, and they'll be, I suppose, a way for us to shield ourselves against sins, which in another time we were able actually to physically escape from, but now I suppose we have to face in this kind of new normal. There's also a lot of negative messages that come from the media, or that come from ourselves. We can always have like a negative slant on what's kind of going on, in the sense that I can't go out of my house, or this is getting really boring, or I don't. This is not what I kind of signed up for, and I suppose we'll go through that throughout the course of this talk. I just wanted to focus a little on habits. So I heard a really nice kind of Chinese proverb, which talked about a kind of master and his servant, or his kind of person that was learning from him, where he'd asked his servant, go pull up a small tree by the roots. So it wasn't really a tree; it was just a kind of shrub. So he pulled it up by the roots, very easy. And the next day he said, go to this tree and pull it out by its roots. Go to a big tree and pull it out by its roots. And the kid kind of said, no, I can't do that. It's so deeply ingrained in the earth. And the proverb was about habits, good or bad habits. And the idea was, if they're deeply ingrained, if good habits become deeply ingrained, or bad habits for that matter, then they are harder to pull out once they become fully grown and become fully formed. And I suppose in this time, it's a really, really good opportunity to form these kind of good habits, or to seek to go on that journey of uprooting, maybe not a tree trunk of bad habits, but ones that may have caught us off guard. So where are we going? I thought, these are just some slides for the introduction, and then we'll go into the media parts of the talk. I think if we want to get somewhere where we haven't gone before, then we have to kind of take a path we haven't taken before. And given the fact that we've kind of been it's, I suppose, the reality that we're in, one can take it in a way where if I was at home, if I didn't have a job, one could take a really, really good opportunity for Um, the audio working, or is it? Uh, can you hear me now? Is it all right now, or? Yeah, it's all right. I'll try to use my phone's internet, see if it's better. Any improvement? Yeah, okay. All right, I'll power on. Yeah, sure. Okay. So I'll just kind of dwell just one more point on habits before I'll skip the next slide because I can think I've gone through it. I think like the problem about habits is they can kind of sneak up on you. Like your first Big Mac, you're not going to get a heart attack, but if you continue on that path, then and it's the only food that you have, or it's you continue with those types of foods, it can eventually end in that. And that's also in kind of the spiritual realm as well, in the sense that sins will lead you away from the Lord. If you not that you can't continue to pray as you sin, but I suppose sin is missing the mark. As you guys know theologically. So like if you continue down those paths, you continue to desire to be away from the Lord. It really starts and ends with the good and bad habits that you have. Good habits obviously being the spiritual readings and biblical readings and prayer and also kind of community, the spiritual community that you have. So you have like a level of understanding between others that you care for them and they care for you. So that's all I'll kind of talk to you about habits. And let's, I suppose, start about the biblical reading. So this is one of the Psalms, one of David the prophet and King Psalms. As a deer pants for the streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. And David's a great example because David has three really clear times in his life where he was isolated. He was isolated when Saul was seeking his life, and he had many, many failed attempts on David's life. Albeit David was with other people, but he must have felt very, very isolated because his best friend, he couldn't see Jonathan, and he also was kind of made, he was dispelled. He was taken out of any of levels of authority, official levels of authority. Obviously, he has warriors that were with him. That was the first time. One of the other times was when he sang with Saul when he went to the Philistines and he lived there for several years. And then the third was even when Saul had died, and they were kind of fighting the civil war between the kingdoms of Judah and Benjamin, and then against Israel. He was not allowed to be in his country. He was made to be kind of taken away. So he was isolated in those times, and oftentimes David would seek the Lord's kind of he would seek the Lord's advice. He would always go to the Lord. He would consecrate time to the Lord. These were the periods in David's time where he was in this most amount of distress in his life. He feared for his life. He feared for his enemies, and you can see that with even the way the Lord responds to Solomon when he says, "It's good that you asked for wisdom because your father always asked for the death of his enemies." But he always converted those fears into prayer, especially when he was taken away from his rightful position as kind of general or commander, and mainly due to jealousy. These things kind of took place, and he would write these psalms, and these psalms really impacted Saul, but I'm sure he also recited them and they impacted his life, and you could feel the way that he used to praise the Lord. You can feel the distress that he had. You can feel the emotion. So the psalms, although we use them as prayers almost in all the hours of prayer, and also in our own biblical readings, they're a great place to go in times where you're seeking words to find for the Lord. So biblical reading obviously can also be a prayer, but in the same token, that desire, like as a deer pants for the water, so my soul pants for you, my Lord. It gives you, the biblical reading gives you an avenue and a way to hear the Lord's words, to quench the thirst and to quench that desire which you can have. And it also transforms us. So, David was just this ruddy boy. As they say, he was, when Samuel was choosing from the sons from Jesse, that he didn't choose anyone, but the Lord chose. He didn't choose David, and he considered to choose the other brothers. That the Lord looked at him and said, "This is a man after my own heart who desires me." And he yearns for me, he desires me, he longs for me. The biblical readings. So the best three ways, the best kind of three images I could find was one of the ocean in relation to biblical readings. And I really like this. That biblical readings, you could really read something on the surface. You could read all the characters in the narrative of the Nativity, or in when the Lord's at Gethsemane, or when the Lord is crucified. or his resurrection and ascension, and you could think they're kind of really nice to read, and you enjoy kind of reading them on a surface level. But then you can always, and given that we have a bit more time, really go into the depth of biblical meaning, what this means for me. What have the early church fathers said about these things? What are the commentaries saying about these things? What historically does the Lord mean when he says something? And how can that impact me? How can I get more from these biblical readings? How can I go into the depths of the ocean of the Bible? Because the Bible's so layered, like the deeper, the more you read, the deeper you begin to understand. Which leads me, I guess, to the antenna. Because the best way, and that's why, Passion Week is such a blessed week in our church, the best way for us to hear the word of God, for us to understand God's will for us, and that when we pray, we hear the answer, is through Bible reading. And that's why Passion Week, if used appropriately, or if used well, you can actually gain so many gems and insights into your own life and into what the future year may look like. And then the third one is these quartz, which is like a quartz which has gold in it. Similar kind of idea, that these veins of gold are in quartz. That's how they mine gold. This is one of the ways that they mine gold, and that you can kind of look at the quartz and say, "Oh, that's really, really nice," from far away, or you could really mine those words, the golden words, the precious words, which the Lord has kind of reserved for you for that day, and make them into something like Saint Moses the Black, where he loved this verse: "The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force." He took that as that a way for him to be repentant and to be violent against his own sins, which all of us would blush at, and that he became great monk, a great leader of more than 500 monks, and a man who we still look up to, and we see as a great example for our lives, or for turning our lives. Now, I know, I suppose biblical readings can be a bit boring, depending, I suppose, on what you're reading. Or maybe I won't say that they're boring, but I'll say that in order to start some good habits, there needs to be small steps. And obviously, with the guidance of Abuna and with your spiritual guides, taking that step is really, really good, because after a while, once you consecrate some time, you'll find those words are speaking to you. You'll find that the Lord is speaking to you. You may be reading and there's nothing that's kind of going through, and there's definitely anything that's in relation to spiritual life, in relation to anything that you do, will take time, and understanding these things, and understanding certain things that are biblical truths, and continuing to persevere through that is really important as well. And I'm not saying that you fill hours and hours of your day with biblical reading, but that would be awesome, and really, really beneficial for you. But definitely those small steps at the start, and if you're already at a intermediate or at an advanced level, that's fine. Continue to read and continue to enjoy the word of the Lord, and to listen to his words, and understand what they're saying to you. I suppose also biblical readings, you could take it many, many different ways. You could actually have not just commentaries. You could read volumes into the history, if you enjoy that, or, and any of the other angles biblically, into reading a story just about Saint Peter, like the life of Saint Peter, and looking at his biblical mentions, but then also reading a book about that from a spiritual book viewpoint. That can be really beneficial for you. There's many, many different things you can do, but I suppose the guiding tenet, or the guiding idea, is that it enriches your spiritual life. and brings you closer to the Lord. And it's not just kind of reading for knowledge, but it's reading for spiritual growth and coming closer to the Lord. Spiritual reading. So this is the one slide which has a lot of text on it, and I'll read this out from Hercules, the Baba Krulus. He says, "Persist in and honor reading. Reading is the spring of intelligent prayer. For as I had previously told you, reading for a good purpose will show you how to walk on the virtuous path. Whoever reads the books to understand the path of virtue, this path will be opened before him." So I'll read the last sentence again because I really like it. Whoever reads the books to understand the path of virtue, this path will be opened before him. So the sole purpose that Baba Krulus read books, and we understand that he liked books by Saint Ephraim Syrian, is because he wanted to live a righteous life. He wanted to get closer to the Lord. He had a good purpose. That was his guiding kind of purpose. And the books that I've read in the past, some have not been beneficial, but some have really, really inspired me for periods of time. They really fed into my spiritual life. Maybe I wasn't as strong kind of spiritually, or I was lacking in my spiritual life, and I read an inspirational spiritual story about someone else that I could look up to, that I could mold or my life on, or that I felt like, yeah, it's kind of like a resuscitation of my spiritual life. Or you could actually be flourishing spiritually, and this just gives you this positive reinforcement and this ability to continue on, because I think in our spiritual lives, we don't always have positive reinforcement. We can always be thinking to always have that positive momentum. These are like the vitamins of your spiritual life, the ones that just maintain your energy level, that can help you move from one point to the next and sustain your kind of confidence level. Confidence level is not probably not the right word of saying it, but it would maintain your kind of positive movement kind of forward, and it gives you new ideas how I can serve the Lord, or how I can continue my Bible reading. For example, like Amber Brown read the Bible once every month. I'm not saying we can do that, but I'm saying if we're tired, we can look to him as an example and say, well, he had a whole diocese, and he still did this. So I can read a little. So it can kind of nudge you, give that kind of point of motivation. That may not be a motivating force for you, but it very well may be for me or for someone else. So different things and different messages will motivate us in different ways. But this is definitely something that will encourage and move you forward. Similarly, with the Bible readings, you could read anything you want. You could read theological, devotional, historical, spiritual books that can definitely enrich and give more context to your biblical reading, or they can also give you some good understanding of church history, and can actually help you in your spiritual lives as well. As long, if you're studying, that's a different thing as well, because that can give you context around why the Lord was saying certain things, like I said before, and historical background. So they all will enrich your Bible readings, enrich your understanding about what the Lord is saying, because there is a lot of context around a lot of what he's saying, and commentaries kind of unlock that, give you a bit more kind of read between the lines understanding. These are just some of the books. These are probably my 3 favorite books that I've gone back to in the past. So the one, my favorite is on the left here, which is The Way of the Pilgrim, which is about a Russian pilgrim who goes from place to place, and he wants to perfect prayer. He wants to understand more about the arrow prayer, and it motivated me quite a bit when I'd read it a couple of years ago. Beginning to Pray is a beautiful book as well. It's very simple. It gives you really, really good advice on prayer. And then I Dare to Call Him Father is about a Pakistani Muslim convert, and it's a beautiful story. Again, very, very motivating. All right, good works. Very, very nice contemplation. A Bunishnuda from the monastery. I'm a beggar. I beg and I receive from the Lord, and then I give to someone else, so that I whatever I receive, I give. That I'm overflowing with the Holy Spirit. I'm overflowing with words which are uplifting to others, and this comes directly from the Lord. So all good works come from God, but it's always important to precede these good works. We actually do these good works, so they're not just good works for the sake of good works, or just for the sake of feeling good about yourself for doing them, which isn't a bad thing, by the way, in and of itself, but that you're always kind of glorifying the Lord through them. I heard a really, really beautiful kind of a video. It was about a 10-minute video from an Irish guy who just got COVID-19 about a month ago or a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that he was kind of on death's door, and he was in intensive care, and he prayed to the Lord, and he said, "Lord, send me someone." And no pastor can go into that area; it's just doctors. And he asked, "Lord, send me someone. I need someone to uplift me. I'm not in a good way, and it's touch and go. I could die. So please bring someone and give me kind of uplifting word." And he said that a cleaner who wasn't there for the previous days came, and he told him, he served for 14 years in Nigeria, and he came, and he gave him really, really like uplifting words, and he said, I'll pray that the Lord gets you through this, and I pray that the Lord is kind of with you in this period. And it really, really helped him through that journey. So what I mean to say is that the Lord can use us in good works, especially in this time. And I think if I were to flip it and say, maybe think twice before you say something that's negative about someone, because it's us and our own thoughts now. I mean, we're at home, right? So if we do kind of, I'm not saying bag someone out, but if we do get tell someone off, or if we do get annoyed with someone and let them have it, know that it's a bit of a different environment now, where we're kind of just sitting at home, not thinking about anything else. So it may have even further negative impact. It's probably something that you don't think day to day, but definitely, if it's only you and your own thoughts, you can definitely magnify something that someone else has said to you. So always think about that as well. So sometimes a good work is actually not saying anything, or holding your tongue. Again, to uplift someone else, or to at least not bring them down. But I'll go back to this story that I was talking about, this Irish person, that he was blessed, and the Lord used this person, this cleaner, as a tool in his hands. The Lord used this person to uplift the spirit of this guy that was going to die from COVID. So similarly, the Lord can use us, and he uses anyone that desires to do good works in his name. So I think it's important that there's probably different ways now you can actually do good works. A call, a thank you, a message. We know that there's people that are like they're not as close to the church. We know there's some people that are like that. We know that there's people that aren't as socially active as us or have as many friends as us. So we know that they're more than likely, it is this kind of exacerbates the situation. We know all these things. We know that the people that are older are more than likely feeling more lonely now because they simply can't go anywhere and no one can physically be with them. And we all have people that are elderly in our house, in our family. So these are all ways, ideas, to reach out. Or if you have, a good thought, even if you have a good thought about someone else that has done something positive in your life, then you have a world of time to actually go out and tell them what that actually meant to you. And I think the kind of situation now it's a bit lacking in these kind of this positive reinforcement to others. And this is something that may change the course of their day. It may be that you're the Lord's tool that day. That you are doing the Lord's work that day. That your message on any of the social media platforms, or that your call really made that person's day or uplifted them. It takes me back to actually when I was doing visitations for Sunday school, and we went to me and the person that I was serving with. We had a difference of opinion. So I told him, I mean, there's some people that we're not going to go through and do everything. We like read the Bible and pray and everything. There's some people that I suppose we've got to try to talk to and get on side before we go. And kind of do that. And he said, no, we need to do that. So we took it to a woman Shoy, who's like the source of wisdom in most situations when we had a difference of opinion. The woman Shoy said something really nice. He said, you don't need to go do everything. You don't need to read the Bible and pray long periods of time. But he said, definitely, whatever contemplation that you had, at the very least, obviously he wanted us to pray and read the Bible with everyone. And I'm talking more about people that weren't consistently going to church. So we needed to kind of find a way of building it into a discussion or something like that. But he said, if you have received something like a word which moved you, then that's what you should talk about, and try to link it to the Bible, and obviously pray a bit at the end. But I took that. We both took that as something that we did going forward from that time, and that's something that's very nice. That if something that's touched you, then try to kind of share it with other people from a good works viewpoint. If it's like a visitation style kind of call or reaching out. But there's many ideas. I think as I was saying from before, the first point that I was trying to mention. I think making sure that you're praying for that and that you're seeking the Lord through this is really important, and that it's an overpouring. I've received. I'm a beggar. I've received from the Lord, and now I'm also giving back to Him through the service of these other people. And I think, the really nice example, which is relevant now for this period, is around Christ and the leper. And I'm sure you've heard this story many, many times before. There's a couple of different times the Lord healed lepers. There's I think one where He didn't touch, and then the other where He touched the leper. And they used to live like outside of towns, and if people came by, they would ring the bell. So in this period or in this time, they isolated from their family. because they would be thing. So and to touch them was actually a really, really big thing. And that we're serving, but if we're serving
No, he's cutting out. I can't hear anything. I think we've lost him altogether. Oh, there he is. He's back.
can you hear me? I think it comes in and out, has good patches. So yeah, good work. So I think as long as the main kind of the guiding thought is that you're doing this in service social. I mean, breaking out again. Yeah, all good. Yeah, all good. I'll try. No, all good.
Have we lost him altogether? So he locked there and locked back in. If, does anyone have questions until he comes back? Or comments? Or anything? No one has any comments? No one has any contemplations? No one has any questions? Were you all listening at least?
Miss you guys.
هذه comment بتاعتك.
Yeah.
هو ده اللي انت قدرتي عليه؟
Yeah.
يا خرابي. Very spiritual. And it's so spiritual. I tell you, a kid.
Love
Look,
you,
he's back.
Anna.
Huh?
I have some lip. I love you too. Can you share the lip?
And I'm making sure that you can't see my my lip being
You
hard.
can hear the crunching.
We can hear it.
You can hear, huh? And it's a special lip from Egypt. He's not back.
Can you hear me?
Okay, while we're waiting for him, seeing that no one has anything, I'm gonna pick on people, and the first one on my list is Irini T. What have you what have you taken? Like, if you can give us one message you've taken so far from tonight. Unmute your microphone so I can hear you.
I don't know when I don't function under pressure.
It's no pressure.
There's a lot of pressure.
Okay, there's a lot of pressure, Lee. John Paul. Bring that mic down and unmute, and I love the mic. I'm coming over just to use it.
Please come.
Type Oli. What have you taken so far?
What have I taken so far? Well, what really stuck was when he was talking about the little things we can do to influence people in this time, especially like in our service. And I don't know, like people that have previously been lonely. I don't know, sorry, really putting me on the spot here, but yeah, people who have previously been lonely, how just the little things that we say or do can really light up their day. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mark. Luke, you're next.
I think it's a good opportunity at the moment to read more, especially myself. Like a lot of us, I'm working from home, so before or after my shift, plenty of time. So, of course, to read more, the text to the desert fathers, and all of that. So I think that's important as well. That's what I took away so far.
Luke.
Forgive me.
Amanda, you're next.
I just got up to use the restroom. What was the question?
What have you taken in so far from Luke's talk so far?
I literally just came. This is so embarrassing. I'm sorry.
Amanda.
I'm so late. I'm
Amanda.
very sorry.
That's okay. Luke.
I think I like two parts. The first part was like doing the good works and focusing on the people that are struggling the most right now, and the ones that are unemployed or the elderly specifically, and family members. And then I liked that saying that he used with Baba Carolus about opening I can't remember what it was exactly, about reading our Bibles, or you take what you put in, or like that one about reading the Bible or reading. I guess
the more you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. Basim. Philo, you're next. Basim looks like he's not sitting in front of his. Oh, no, there he is. Hey, Basim.
Can you repeat the question, Abul?
What have you taken? Like, give us one message from what he said.
Oh, what have I taken? Oh, actually something that he brought up that I thought that was very important. But I always struggle with this the most is actually just reaching out to people. I think there's a lot of people that we overlook and we think like we forget about people. And there's a lot of people that I'm sure are struggling a lot with this situation. You know, they're being stuck at home. They're kind of in their own minds in a way, and it's kind of getting to them. The loneliness and everything that's going on is getting to them. So I think it's good for us to use this time, especially because you know we're also stuck at home, to reach out to everyone. You know, everyone's sort of feels the love and feels like there's support, and you know we're all in the same boat. So there's always other people there. There's always everyone.
Luke is back. Luke is back. Can you hear us, Luke?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
كمل حبيبي. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, good.
كمل حبيبي.
Okay, so I think I'll go into good works. Sorry, to importance of balance. I think the way that I was looking at this was body, spirit, mind, and I suppose spirit and mind are both spiritual topics or topics that we can kind of talk about from a godly or a God-focused perspective. But when it comes to body, I suppose I don't know. For me, it's I need to like exercise is important because it breaks up my day. But everyone's different. But I think the kind of if you stay at home, it's good. The only way you can actually get out of the house is to exercise. One of the only ways to get out, unless you're going to a wedding or a funeral, or one of a couple of different reasons. But I definitely think that that's a positive outlet and a way. And I think from a mind viewpoint, also socializing is important. But I think looking at it, everything done in the kind of moderation is important. And where you have to compensate from your social life, obviously, and you're probably already doing it in different outlets and probably using social media in different ways or using Zoom in ways you've never used, like here, using House Party or using any of those kind of sharing ways to remain social and active with others. But you could do that through service as well. So if you want to physically see someone, then that's a really good way of kind of reaching out. But maybe just to focus, just to mention one point about good works was that good works generally, when it comes to the social aspect of good works, which I think is the majority of what we can do, it is something that is not necessarily for you. It's not more than likely not for your own benefit, in the sense that it's not that you're receiving something. When you call a mate and you socialize with them, you kind of, it's a mutual thing. You're confiding in each other, or you're talking to each other, so you gain something and that other person gains something. But specifically when it comes to kind of the reaching out for a spiritual reason, tends to be the people you may not want to talk to, or may never have wanted to talk to, who are on the outskirts, who don't have as many friends, or it may be a loved one who's older, who may be very hard to talk to. That's a service. That's a good service as well, by the way. Don't get me wrong, there definitely will be other people that you need to they need to confide in you, and you need to reach out to them, and you will socialize with them, and you get this mutual benefit. But definitely that service of reaching out to people that you wouldn't otherwise have reached out to is something that is above human, and that's why it really requires your prayer first, and that the Lord's words are the ones that are spoken, and that you pray before you talk, or you pray before you reach out. Say, Lord, give me something. Give me something. Give me a way that I can actually reach out and say something. And it become positive for them. It become something that leads them to you, especially in this situation. So spirit, um, I think it's got to do with sanctification. You know, you're sanctifying time to the Lord. So you're sanctifying prayer time, you're sanctifying Bible reading time, you're sanctifying spiritual reading. But spiritual reading is different in the sense that spiritual reading, if you can get a book that you can't put down, which is also a positive motivator to your spiritual life, that is a absolute slam dunk. There's no other way of putting it, because it will provide you a level of momentum in your spiritual, in your prayers, that um, is amazing. Is amazing because you want to read this book. You are interested in reading it. There's interesting stories. You're benefiting from it spiritually, and you're inspired by it. So that definitely can give you. Sometimes, you know, when you don't want to pray, you can read a spiritual book and it can drive you to prayer. And I'm not saying you supplement prayer for spiritual books by any means. No, the whole purpose is for you to then enrich your prayer life and your Bible reading for the most part. So yes, spirit, yeah, I suppose, is about sanctification, sanctifying time for your spiritual nourishment. And then mind, we touched on it before, is just around, there can be a lot of negative messages that you can get from this time. And you can kind of get down by, when are we going to get out of this cycle? When I'm going to be able to just do normal things again? Or you could take it as an opportunity. And the Lord can always mold this, or you've got to allow him to, by talking to him. He can always change these things into positives. We say, I have been given a beautiful opportunity to spend more time with him. And don't get me wrong, there'll still be time for entertainment. There'll still be time for all these other things which we're already doing. But that you say, okay, I'll increase a bit, and watch how because you can benefit from it in ways that you may never have thought before. Time management. You can see on the right side here, this was the best thing for work. We did a couple of years ago. There was two things that we got. So every couple of years, we do these time management courses and stuff like that for work. And we get different things from it. But the two ones that stayed with me over the years were these two. And it was a very good exercise at work, and I think it's a good exercise for when you stay at home and even for work as well. There are urgent and important things. So this is like the time management quadrant. Urgent and important would be prayer and your spiritual life in this instance, or maybe paying the bills or something like that, something that's really, really urgent. Important but not urgent, maybe exercise, for example. You really want to do it, and it's important to you, but it's not urgent. It can be pushed back. And then urgent and not important is potentially things like a friend's response to someone's messaged you, and it's not important that you get back to them straight away, but it's to them urgent, but not to you, maybe not as urgent. And then not important and not urgent is everything else. It could be like entertainment, it could be checking like social media and stuff like that. And what I found was with my work life, I was doing a lot of the not important urgent and the important and not urgent, and I wasn't doing enough important and urgent in here. And so I mapped out everything that I'd done for a week, and I noticed a lot of them were in the three quadrants that they shouldn't have been in. It's a good exercise, easy exercise that maybe can help you for your time management. And then the other one was eat that frog. It's really weird. It's very, very strange. Previous manager who had taken us through this. So it was like a life coach who talked about eating a frog in a kind of survival camp that he had done. So that was the worst thing that he could do. The worst or the hardest thing that he did in the whole camp was eating a frog. And then so he wrote a whole book called Eat That Frog, and it became extremely popular. If you Google it, you'll find Eat That Frog. And the idea is do the hardest thing first. Do the email. So I'll just start it from a work example, but then I'll talk spiritually. Do the hardest email, the email where if you send that email, there could be 6, 7 different ways that it could be an absolute disaster, and you've got to really word it well, and it's the one thing you don't want to do, but it's extremely urgent. It's really important. Do that first, complete it, and then your day will form perfectly. Many times we don't want to pray. Many times we don't want to read our Bibles. Many times we don't do spiritual things. So it's the same kind of concept that at the start of the day, if you sanctify that time, if you prioritize it, it can be really, really beneficial for you. So that's I think we've kind of gone over time. It's probably been an hour and a half since we started, in between kind of the polling. Can you guys see, how do I share the poll? Maybe I'll talk 1 or 2 minutes on the poll. Okay. Yeah, share your screen. That's great. Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Yes. Beautiful screensaver. No, I can't see anything. Send it to me and I can share my
Yeah,
screen.
I got it. I got it.
I can see it.
Oh, nothing yet.
I don't see any. Oh, wait, yeah.
You just have to download it.
It just popped up.
Here it is.
Ah, it just popped up now. Yeah, it worked.
Yeah,
Not for me.
Yeah.
It's working. It's working. Yeah, it's working.
You see it? See me? Breaking up again. Oh, yeah, sure. Can you guys see it?
It's coming.
Is it on the screen or?
Started. Yep, there we go.
Yeah, cool. All right.
Pinch out for a bigger screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all good. Yeah,
I
sure.
didn't get it.
I can see it.
I can see it, but I'm being careless. Have you?
So yeah, I was just thinking of trying to make it a bit more interactive and place this into some of the slides that I was kind of talking to. But so yeah, it's interesting. So do you feel closer? So yeah, so most people or half the people feel closer. I suppose like a quarter of them feel more distant, and half of them a little less the same. Yeah, I think most people would have increased social media consumption. I think all I was going to say to that was, I think it's very hard not to do that in the current instance. But the I don't do this, but I want to start doing this. The one thing that I want to start doing is going on airplane mode whenever I do anything spiritual. So that just locks everything out. It's a really nice contemplation I heard from one of my Sunday school teacher. And then it probably doesn't tell me too much. It's probably an even keel across. And yeah, that was just a question I wanted to ask. I think most, yeah. Do you know what day it is? Never. Yeah, that's it. That's me done. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for Luke? Tell me we haven't lost Luke. It looks like we have. Any questions? No? كله كده بيبص in a very, very stunned matter. طب, who should I pick on next? I'm only joking. I'm not going to pick on anyone. I think the one thing that we've lost, Luke, have we? Yeah. Has Luke totally gone? I was talking and I had my phone on mute. Who are we going to pick on next? No one?
You were up to Philo, Abuna. You were up to Philo.
I was up to Philo. أنا قلت فيلو next وبعدين ما كملتش. فيلو يا رب تكون لسه صاحي. وريني العيون الحلوة يا فيلو. بص هو فيلو مش موجود. اهو طلع يجري. انت كنت فين
Thanks, Michael. I was using the printer. I was really good. Sorry.
What did you take out of this?
The thing that was when Luke was talking about spiritual books. Oh, you can't hear me?
Yeah, say again. Go ahead.
The thing I heard the most was when we were talking about spiritual books.
Okay, we lost Philo. Saved by the internet. أي حد تاني feels like sharing anything? And one of the things I love the most and never actually thought of it this way. Right at the beginning, he said something that really, really struck me, that our church is not our church is a very ascetical church. And most of our church fathers, the ones that really achieved greatness, if we think about it in terms of their spiritual lives, did that when they were in seclusion. And right at the beginning, he said, we have an opportunity to actually taste that life. We have an opportunity to actually taste what it's like to just dedicate everything to God. Now, today is probably the longest day I've ever stayed at home. But it's as difficult as it is. I think if we can try and utilize, there was a lot of really, really good advice, spiritual books, prayer, actually using the time, his idea of using that plane mode. طبعا, I think my whole family would love me to do that. But it's they're the practical things that we can do so that we can really benefit from this. كلكم you all look so serious. أنا ابتديت أقلق. طيب. I miss you all. That's all I can say. أي حد عنده أي حاجة? Do we have any announcements?
Miss you too, Abuna.
You all have the timetables. You all will get your times in terms of deacons attending church or people doing work at church. And I hope I catch glimpses of you during this week. I had someone asking me to do the photos on the decks like that other priest that did it. I'm sorry, the decks are empty with no photos, and I find it hard to pray. I can't imagine having photos there. The liturgy will take 5 hours instead of 1, because I'll be stopping for an hour between every single word. May the Lord bless your lives. Like I said, I'm hoping to see you all, and I will see you all through this week. And may the Lord lift this period, that it becomes a spiritual charge for us, but more importantly, that we all get through it safely. Okay? May the Lord bless your lives. Glory be to God forever and ever. Amen. Yeah. Bye-bye.